Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Here with Andrew. Want to introduce what we're going to be doing today. We're going to learn a little bit more about Andrew, his background, crypto history, and then dive into layer two a little bit. But first things first, Andrew, how are you?
I'm great, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, here, usually like to kick off. Do you have a story before crypto? Then we'll talk about kind of what made you get into crypto, and we'll walk through that kind of timeline.
Yeah, totally. Actually, one of the big things that got me into crypto and I guess decentralized finance is I was working on the trading floor of BMO, and that's kind of where I got to see firsthand how we would measure we would measure our trading time in microseconds, and we would measure our settlement time in days. And so it seemed like this crazy imbalance between sort of like the front end of finance, which has been revolutionized by the internet revolution, and then the back end of finance, which hasn't changed in over 100 years. I actually remember because it was a really big thing at the time. We were moving from T plus three on settlement to T plus two. And that was seen as a really, really big thing. Whereas obviously using crypto, it's T plus 10 minutes at most. And so anyways, that sort of working on the trading floor at the time when crypto was starting to rage made me made me sort of realize that the front end and the back end of finance were totally misaligned.
Ah, interesting. So working on the trading floor. Okay, so so you're seeing crypto kind of popping off. Walk me through. So, but what makes you get in? What's the, oh, I could see a fit here.
Yeah, totally. I think like that was kind of the initial motivation was realizing that the front end of finance had been revolutionized by the internet, but the back end hadn't. And the thing, this is around 2017, things were just starting to get get big in crypto. I guess getting big enough that the mainstream financial industry was starting to pay attention. And the thing that really made me pay attention was actually this project called Zero X, which had just done their ICO. So an ICO is like an initial coin offering. And what they were doing was creating a decentralized exchange. So what that means is you have kind of centralized exchanges, which are things like Coinbase, which are custodial. So users deposit their assets there and then trade into other assets, and then they can withdraw. But it's similar to how like the current financial system works, and it's not, I guess, as revolutionary. But what projects like Zero X were doing, where essentially they were non-custodial, decentralized trading. So the assets were held in your wallet, and then when you made a trade with a peer, it was actually settled directly on the blockchain. And the reason why that got me so interested in crypto was that it made me realize that the applications of smart contracts, and just so the reader or viewers know, smart contracts are essentially like blockchain-based software programs that can facilitate more complex financial transactions. What was interesting is that you could actually apply, it made me realize that you could apply smart contracts to pretty much the entire financial industry beyond just trading. And so that essentially had me going deep into the DeFi rabbit hole, as they say, back in 2017. At that point, it wasn't called DeFi; it was just people just called it the Zero X ecosystem. And yeah, and so I've essentially been in the DeFi ecosystem of crypto since then, just reading as much as I can and running projects and deploying my own capital.
Yeah, incredible. Before even called DeFi, before even really you heard much of the word staking and other things too. So incredible. And then I guess to kind of give the story to some of the people that listening, what were some of the projects that you I guess participated in, if you don't mind sharing, or anything that you had your hands on, obviously, and then we'll talk about how layer two starts.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I've participated and invested in a number of different DeFi protocols, as both like an early stage investor and like a secondary investor. But the big project I've been a part of, which I've actually done that project with my co-founders of Layer 2, is this thing called SX Network. And so what SX Network is the first smart contract blockchain to use prediction market for governance. So what I mean by that is you have these smart contract blockchains, and the first one was Ethereum, and kind of over the last 6 to 12 months, people are creating new layer 2 chains for scalability. And what SX Network is essentially a smart contract chain. And with these smart contract chains, though, one of the big issues is the fact that the governance of the chain is typically very opaque and just overall not transparent and not very trustworthy. And what we are doing with SX Network is actually using, at least the thesis is that the governance can be done better if you allow the free market to decide governance decisions. And so the way you do that is you actually create a prediction market on governance decisions. And essentially what prediction market is sort of like a betting market. And essentially you allow the free market to determine what governance decisions should be passed and what shouldn't be passed. And if the governance decision leads to the outcome that governance hoped for, then the people who bet on that governance proposal get paid out, and the people who bet against it get lose their stake. So it's sort of like skin in the game governance. And then there's a number of other features. It's built on the Polygon SDK. So Polygon is the #1 layer 2 network on Ethereum. And Polygon has essentially created this SDK, which is a software development kit, which allows people to spin up their own blockchains. We're actually the first blockchain to use that. And then finally, just essentially getting more and more projects on top of this chain. So I think, and then that's just that's the main project that I've been working on. And then there's a number of other projects that, like I said, I've been sort of helping advise and investing in, and I also write and publish my own research into the DeFi space and crypto space, and have been doing so for the last, I guess, 4 years.
Yeah, you've done a ton of podcasts, ton of other things we'll share it around for sure. Yeah, you're out there. I guess kind of, to give people a little bit more around, give me the inception around layer 2, and then we'll walk that through kind of what layer 2 is. But I also want to know what, made you guys say, hey, like, Prophecy DeFi is doing some cool stuff. We'd love to be a part of it. But first, you want to maybe introduce layer 2 at a kind of more of a general sense, and then we'll talk about how you guys kind of get involved with Prophecy.
Yeah, totally. So I think I guess just to tie in the two things, Prophecy DeFi's mission to me is to bring DeFi to the everyday investor. So DeFi is still a very inaccessible but rapidly growing financial asset class. And the mission and vision, I guess, of Prophecy DeFi is to bring that to the everyday public market investor and make it accessible to them. So the reason why I say that is that fits perfectly with what we're doing at layer 2. Layer 2 is essentially a company that manages DeFi capital and technology, focusing on layer 2 blockchain networks. So what I mean by that is, so I guess before I even go into that, DeFi, decentralized finance, involves essentially a blockchain. It's the creation of a new financial industry based on these blockchain-based smart contracts, and it encompasses a number of areas. The main ones being trading, lending, and derivatives. And all of these decentralized finance protocols. Just so that you know, the TVL, or the total amount of assets locked in DeFi, has grown over 60x over the last 12 months, from $1 billion to over $60 billion today. And the reason why I mention that is all of these different financial DeFi protocols require capital to operate. They're actually quite capital intensive. So what layer 2 does is essentially it has its own capital, it manages its own capital and deploys it into these DeFi protocols. And our focus is on these new networks called layer 2 DeFi protocols that are essentially built off of Ethereum. So over the last 12 months, so DeFi has grown from $1 billion to $60 billion. The vast majority of that growth has happened on Ethereum. So Ethereum was kind of the original smart contract blockchain. And for that reason, the vast majority of these DeFi protocols exist on Ethereum. And the problem is that Ethereum is not yet scalable. It's very much V0 or V0.1 of the Ethereum technology. It does not support the number of transactions necessary for these DeFi protocols. It's kind of like the internet in 1995. And so the problem is as DeFi has grown rapidly on Ethereum, the transaction costs of using Ethereum have skyrocketed. Transactions that used to cost 5 to 10 cents now cost $5 to $10, to give you a sense of the scale. And what's happened over the last 3 months is that increasingly a lot of these DeFi protocols are shifting to these layer 2 networks. So what a layer 2 network is essentially, my definition of it is essentially a non-Ethereum network. And typically these networks are far more scalable, albeit at the cost of security and decentralization. And what layer 2's goal is to identify, source, and deploy capital into these new and emerging DeFi protocols on these non-Ethereum networks. We see the greatest amount of opportunity there. It's the most inefficient market, and quite frankly has the most amount of complexity due to the just rapid fragmentation of the space. And so it's one of those spaces where if you sort of have the expertise in identifying these opportunities, then it sort of pays to have that expertise.
Yeah, and I think we can do a deeper dive another time into some how you guys deploy capital, what you look for, and maybe a little bit deeper of a video. But this has been incredible so far. So now walk me through DeFi, of course, exploding. We can do a DeFi industry video too. We can do a bunch of things. So these are little great tidbits. And for anyone watching so far, please drop your questions below. Make sure Andrew gets to go over a ton of different topics. But now walk me through. So what made you guys excited to kind of get involved with Prophecy DeFi?
Yeah, so I think we had been, just given our industry experience, we've had a number of opportunities to sort of manage capital for different crypto funds or private funds and such. But the interesting thing about Prophecy to me was this whole idea of making it accessible to the everyday investor. So essentially bringing this DeFi exposure, what I would say is sophisticatedly managed DeFi exposure, to the everyday investor who has a brokerage account. So and essentially bringing awareness as well and education of DeFi to the masses. And so I think the reason why Prophecy DeFi is so interesting is that it is a very unique kind of opportunity to do that. And rather than managing essentially kind of like a private fund that no one knows about and sort of only manages high net worth money, you can essentially, like I said, bring this exposure to everyone. So I find that very democratic and interesting in that sense. And then beyond that, I just think that the team around in Prophecy DeFi is really what sort of sold us on joining forces. You have a very kind of like an industry veteran in the capital markets, and John McMahon is the CEO, and then the expertise of 9 Point Digital Asset Group, which is led by Alex Tapscott, who's also the chairman of the advisory board for Prophecy. And so it was a team that we were very comfortable with, and sort of a mission and structure that made a lot of sense to us.
Yeah, no, awesome. I think it's a great match, and you touched on a lot of great points. The amount of people that are staking right now, sub 0.1% of the population, and you've got this whole world of normal capital markets, and this is a great kind of tool to get exposure to that industry that's growing, like you said, so fast, from 1 billion to 60 billion. And really JP Morgan, all sorts of groups are coming out saying, hey, it's not done yet, and it's still growing incredibly fast. We can do a deeper dive into some other stuff later, but Andrew, thanks so much for joining. I want to give you the chance. Anything else about yourself you want in this video?
I don't know. It's tough. I would say that the one thing I would want people to take away from this is that I came to crypto from, I would say, more of a financial and trading background. I've been very interested in trading and kind of the financial market, particularly in alternative asset classes, from a very young age. And I think what's interesting about crypto is that we're sort of at a stage in the industry where, for the most part, the vast majority of people in the space are very technically inclined. And what's interesting now is that as we go into the more mainstream, I think there's more and more opportunity and actually need for people who have sort of an expertise in financial markets, given obviously the subject matter of decentralized finance. And I guess the final thing I would say is more about the overall crypto space, which is, I think crypto is the most exciting field to be in by far. I don't think there's anything that's nearly as exciting to people. And you sort of, see that with the level of talent that's coming into the space over the last 6 months to 2 3 years.
Yeah. Here, I got to leave you with one last question. And I get it all the time, and it's all over as well. People even asking about Prophecy DeFi. Give me your price predictions on Bitcoin and ETH end of year.
It's tough to say, really. These assets are so volatile. I mean, again, none of this is financial advice, obviously, and the standard disclaimers around that. I'm actually more, as you could probably tell, I'm more of a bull on Ether than I am on anything else.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm an Ethereum maximalist, but I would say I'm kind of an EVM maximalist, which is the technology behind underlying Ethereum. But I mean, I'm the type of person who thinks who's not selling Ether until it's 6 figures.
Wow, awesome. All right, well, we're leaving it there. Not a necessarily 6 month goal, but definitely agree. This technology is here to stay, and you've got a lot of great forces behind it. I had to ask the question. There's too many people asking it. So, Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time. We're gonna have to do more of these, so I hope you're ready. We're gonna answer a bunch of questions coming soon. And anyone who made it this far, please, if you've got questions, if we can help explain certain things in the DeFi space, please drop it below. But Andrew, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me.